Well, it's been a violent summer in the city. The latest murder, a man gunned down this morning in a drive-by shooting in Rexdale. Torontonians are asking for answers and are looking to all levels of government to help make our streets safer. Joining us live here on BT is the Honorable Bill Blair, Minister of Border Security and Organized Crime Reduction. Thank you so much for coming in.
Of course, happy to be here.
Now, as we mentioned, we had a murder overnight, but also the Danforth shooting, and we've had just a violent summer when it comes to gun violence. And when it comes to you, you're so familiar with the city itself and the illegal guns as well that are coming across the border. What's being done to try to stop that flow?
Actually, a great deal, and I think it's important to keep things in context. We've had some very tragic and violent incidents, and I understand completely the concern of the people of Toronto about this increase in violence that they're experiencing. But in context, Toronto does remain one of the safest large cities in North America. But there is a great deal of work that's going on. And with respect to the illegal guns that are showing up on our streets, frankly, there's two very important sides to that. One is the interdiction of the supply, and we've invested a lot of money at the border through the Customs Border Security Agency and through the RCMP doing investigations to deal with those individuals who illegally smuggle guns into the country. We've also brought forward new legislation to make it, I think, a far more accountable system of firearm registration so that the police can conduct their investigations and to encourage responsible gun ownership. So, and that work continues. And as you saw also last week, or 2 weeks ago, the mayor and the police chief put additional police resources, and those boots on the ground can also be critically important in creating a safer environment for the people of Toronto. But we also have a lot of work to do in this city on reducing the demand for guns. It's one thing to reduce the supply, but you have to reduce the demand. And you do that by going into the communities where this gun violence is most prevalent, and you change some of the social determinants of crime and violence. You create opportunity and jobs and provide, quality services and, different choices for those young people that are currently getting involved in gangs to make better choices. They also see that there are some individuals who are suffering from serious mental illness, and that can, in some rare circumstances, also lead to violence. And so we have to do everything we can to make sure that those people are kept safe and the city remains safe. So reducing the supply and reducing the demand for the guns is part of a broad effort. I think we should always resist simple solutions and deal with this complex issue in all its complexity and address all of the issues that can make it safer for everybody.
So is the ministry now looking at helping the communities, like trying to get to that prevention side of things when it comes to the organized crime reduction?
Absolutely. We've made a substantial amount of money, and we're working with the City of Toronto, but also with social service agencies and non-government organizations across Canada, for those types of programs and initiatives that really do make a difference in communities with outreach to youth. We're looking at a number of restorative justice initiatives that are taking place across the country, including here in the City of Toronto, to divert kids away from sort of that gang culture that sometimes draws them in, and frankly a life of criminality. And so giving those young people better choices and through good programming. But it also involves significant investment in improving housing, improving social services and access to those services, and also addressing issues of social justice in communities, because where young people feel that the justice system doesn't provide justice to them and that they don't have a full and fair opportunity to participate in society, they can make very bad choices, and it can lead to violence in our communities.
Right. I'm going to move on to asylum seekers as well. There was a poll recently done saying that many Canadians believe that we're taking in too many asylum seekers and people who are regularly crossing over the border. And we've had an increase just last month of people crossing over the border irregularly. How is this being worked out and being something that's being stemmed as well at the border?
Let me assure you that this is something that's being very aggressively managed right across the country. And what we've seen worldwide is the largest migration of refugees in the world since 1961. It's a very significant global phenomenon. Canada is being affected in part by decisions that are being made external to Canada in the United States and in other parts of the world. And so we saw last year a fairly significant increase in irregular border crossers and a significant increase in people seeking asylum in Canada. The law in the International Convention to which Canada is a signatory and Canadian law requires that if a person presents themselves at our border seeking asylum, they are entitled by Canadian law to due process. But we manage that very carefully, and that all people coming into this country are subject to rigorous security checks to make sure that there's no issue of criminality or risk to the security of the population. And we also have a responsibility for people seeking asylum to ensure that they're treated with humanity and dignity.
The province, though, has asked for $200 million in help. Is that something that's going to be provided?
And I will tell you, we've had discussions, and we've been working with the province and the City of Toronto. We've also, a very significant impact of this issue has affected Quebec and the City of Montreal. We've been working with the our provincial partners and municipalities. I was recently in Toronto just last week, providing funding to Toronto for some of the extraordinary costs that they've experienced, and also ensuring that we paid for temporary housing shelters so that the people who required it had that available to them. We are working. I'm working very closely now with the Ontario government, looking at the issues of what they consider extraordinary expenses that they've experienced. You know, I think we have the ability to come together and work through this, but all three orders of government have a responsibility to provide services and to help fulfill Canadian law obligations and also, frankly, uphold Canadian values.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. Once again, Minister Bill Blair joining us here this morning. We'll send it over to Frank now for a look at the forecast.